Hello, this is Alan Zundell, and this is a episode for both my channels, this time for Political Dharma, because I'm going to be discussing an alternative political party on the American scene, as well as for my channel Buddha Meets Jesus, because I'm going to be talking to someone whose faith and spirituality has been important to them and something about their own spiritual journey and life. My guest today is Desmond Silveira, and
Yes.
he is very active in the American Solidarity Party, which is a party that is based on, as the website says, Christian democratic principles, which has nothing to do with the current Christian right, or maybe has some little overlap, but not a lot, especially in terms of their relationship to, say, the MAGA movement. But I'll let him explain all that. Hello, Desmond. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thank you for having me on.
Oh, you're welcome. So, first off, could you tell me some of the roles you've played within the American Solidarity Party, as well as whatever current role you are playing?
Yes, so I got involved in the American Solidarity Party back in 2016. Prior to that, I had been a Republican for my whole adult life, but I was not content with either of the major party candidates back in 2016. So I went searching for an alternative, and I found the American Solidarity Party, which happened to suit my values precisely. I got involved. It's a very grassroots party, so I got involved setting up chapters and was selected to be the presidential campaign manager for that year. That was our first year with our own presidential candidate. I got elected to the national committee and have served various roles over the years. Back in 2018, I ran for governor of California as the party candidate. In 2022, I ran for Secretary of State because I'm also a strong advocate of election reform, and I'm currently the executive director of the California chapter of the American Solidarity Party, and at the national level, I'm the director of operations. I've got other minor roles as well, but that's the gist of it.
That's a lot of hats to have worn and to be currently wearing right now. Um, any plans to run for office again? You're here in California.
Yeah, well, I might. Uh, it's kind of difficult because of our top two system.
Yeah.
We get knocked out in June, so there's a lot of work with very little payoff. But if we need someone to run, then I would consider it.
Well, that is a subject in itself, the California top two system and how that affects alternative parties and the whole electoral reform issue. But let's stick with the American Solidarity Party for now. You said you got involved in 2016, and I think that's the first time they actually ran candidates, although they had been around for what, about 5 years before that?
Yes, so that was our first time running a candidate. We ran for president. Prior to that, we were very, very, very tiny. 2016 is when we first grew at an explosive rate.
And what was that? Was it just because the two candidates were so dissatisfactory as they were to a lot of
Yeah,
people? A lot of people.
exactly. Yeah, there was a lot of people searching for alternatives, and a lot of people did find us.
Well, tell me about the basic principles of the American Solidarity Party. I don't think many people are aware of the Christian Democrats in Europe and other parts of the world, so they don't know what that's about. I've also seen on the website the party described as based on Catholic social justice teaching, which I'm familiar with, but also neo Calvinist theology. I know who Calvin was, but I don't know much about neo Calvinist theology. So, what is the party all about?
Sure. So the party's principles are we are socially conservative on economic issues. We're maybe what I would call center left. It's based on uh, Catholic social teaching, but independently, uh, the neo-Calvinists came up with the same political ideology. It's not it's political, meaning that it's not we're not a Christian only party. We welcome people of all faiths or no faith equally, and Christian democracy has which is based on these set of principles is has been popular in Europe and Latin America. It is somewhat unknown in the US, but our that's where our party comes in, where we're spreading the movement, the ideology to America, and um, yeah, so it's Catholic social teaching based off of we're very pro-life, uh, pro-family, pro-marriage, but we're also pro-environment, pro-labor, um, and
Pro
uh,
peace, I saw that as
yes,
well,
yeah, very much
and
pro-peace.
internationalism. So I guess we should try to distinguish your the party's Christian principles from those of the evangelical Christian right, which I imagine, as I said earlier, there's some overlap, but not a lot. And one of the things you just mentioned had to do with economics, and I think that that and nationalism itself are probably very different in the two types of perspectives.
Yes, that is quite different. So our party sees solidarity among all human beings, and uh, in that sense, we advocate for prison reform. We advocate for humane immigration policies. We advocate for the poor and the vulnerable. Um, that can be that's not. I don't want to disparage anyone, but there are within the MAGA movement, there that's not what they're known for.
Yeah, so the one of the things that probably overlaps is both Christian movements have a strong stance against the legality of abortion. And I
Yes,
imagine that is a lot for some folks who are otherwise attracted to the principles. That in particular, it's a real hot button topic these days. Anything you want to say about that or
sure. Yes, absolutely. So, one of the distinguishing characteristics of our party is that we look at abortion both on the supply side and the demand side. We'd like to make it legally tougher to have an abortion, preferably make it illegal to have an abortion. But we don't want to leave it there. We'd like to also uh, address all the concerns that women that lead women to want to have an abortion. So we'd like to provide things like universal daycare. We'd like to uh, offer more support for pregnant women, for young families, for people that are having a tough time getting by. To decrease the demand for abortion, not just uh, cut cut the legal route and abandon them.
okay, so in other words, a less punitive approach,
Correct.
more
Yes.
of a trying to make sure women who want to opt not to have an abortion have the means to do so.
Absolutely.
So
Yes. A true
trying to
choice.
strike a balance, at least from your perspective, although from other perspectives, it may be too far one way or the other. Um, the economic thing, you said center left, but as I look at your program, it does say things like they want to make sure there's a spread of economic resources, like productive assets, not only private businesses, but worker cooperatives and socially owned businesses, I suppose, run the lines of a public ownership of an electric company or further, which is a little more left than center left, at least in that realm.
Yes. Well, sure. So we support. I should clarify that we in the party are not all of one mind. We have different ideas, but Many of us support a system called distributism, which is essentially an ownership economy, meaning we support mom and pop businesses. We feel that our economy should be more geared towards mom and pop businesses over major corporations, uh, conglomerates. We like localism. We prefer that uh, businesses um, cater to their own community, and we feel that an economy will be better. We'll have a strong economy uh, with such a system.
So, word distributism does not necessarily mean redistributism. I had
Correct.
too many syllables there, but redistribution. But there, you do in your platform say things about social support for people who can't support themselves.
Yes, absolutely.
Is there much support within the party for something like a universal basic income?
Actually, we had that in our platform in the past, so there is quite a bit of support. We did pull that out of the platform because I would say maybe this is just a guess, maybe 60% of our membership is in favor of that. And we wanted to cut down our platform to what we are all really truly uh, strongly supportive of. So there are quite a bit of people within the party that say that we should at least explore the idea of a UBI as a means of social support.
Well, I was going to ask you about how you do your platform because in the parties I've been involved in, almost all of them have a lot of struggle over the platform, and it's just the majority vote, and then everybody else has to kind of swallow it or come back to fight another day. But it sounded like you're looking for, and this makes a lot of sense to me, to limit it to the things that have the highest level of support. So did you have like a certain number of policy items you were willing to put in the platform or a cutoff
It's
on level of support, or how did that work?
it's more of a cutoff on the level of support. So there are a lot of great ideas out there, but we really want to focus on our one uh, cons consistent vision, and so we try to limit our platform to those ideas that are very strongly supported, not just marginally supported by those in our membership. We're not trying to define truth. We're trying to establish a set of principles that we can all work towards together towards. And so most of the values in our party platform are values that I'd say at least 80% of the membership can get behind.
Mhm. Have you considered, like, when you vote on a principle or a platform item, listing the level of support for it?
We certainly discuss it for
Oh,
sure.
do
We do a little bit of polling. Often we do a little bit of polling before voting on an item to determine whether it actually belongs in our platform or not.
because I've thought of this in the past. Apparently, I'm not the only one who has, but the idea being that if someone's considering joining the party and there is something in particular that they feel more strong or less or even opposed, then they can see, oh, is this a party where this is, real strong support? Is it a party where this is kind of more the less important in the eyes? Like, where do I fit into it? It would give you a better picture of that, I would think.
Yeah.
But that's my idea, not the idea you've adopted. Um, okay, so that's something about the American Solidarity Party. Do you actually have connections with other parties like Christian Democratic parties? People may not know this, but in some European countries, a dominant party has been the Christian Democrats. I think in Germany, for example.
That's correct. Yes. So we don't have formal relationships with parties outside of the U.S. We've been contacted in the past by some of them, and just to for they wanted to uh, mention that they like to what we're doing and wish us well, but it's not a formal relationship in any way.
Okay. There was one other thing I had on my mind about all that we were just talking about. Let's see if I can retrieve it. I think about the distributives. I'm really tripping on that today. Distributivism goes back to around the time of the beginning of socialism, and it was a alternative point of view, and it was not quite capitalist, not quite socialist, but had more to do with decentralization of economic power and a lot more, like you said, mom and pops. Those
Yes.
that would be a small business in which there's a close relationship between the owners and the workers rather than a more impersonal type relationship where you feel like they're just numbers on a spreadsheet that you can lay off at any point, and also worker cooperatives. So that's all very interesting to me. Could you say something about that tradition? Like it's not just something you all made up, it's something that has a history.
Correct. Yeah. So my understanding, and I'm certainly no historian or expert on the topic, but my understanding is that back when socialism was becoming popular, uh, the Catholic Church and other Christian denominations uh, wanted to reject that, but offer an alternative that was an alternative economic solution that was uh, that served the same needs. So we are absolutely not socialists, but we do recognize that we as a society need to take care of the poor, those that are not doing so great, the vulnerable, and so as you say, distributism is a decentralization of economics. That means we would have smaller mom and pop businesses, and not all businesses can function as tiny mom and pops. So some of the bigger businesses that would need to exist, they can function as worker cooperatives where those who are employed with the businesses are actually owners of the business as well. Back in, I think it's in Spain, there's the very popular instance of such a worker cooperative. I think it's called
Mondragon.
yeah, that's right. That's it. Yep.
Yeah, in the Basque region up in northern Spain, I think. Yeah, that's an interesting history that I've looked into a lot because this is an area near and dear to my heart is worker-owned businesses, not worker-owned so much as worker-controlled, but both could be either or both. So let me go over some of these other principles to see if there's anything else you wanted to expand upon. So we talked about sanctity of life involving, we didn't say this, but it involves more than abortion as an issue. It's also opposed to euthanasia and the death penalty and other things. So it's like people who are not familiar with Catholicism wouldn't know this, but it's kind of called the web of life or the tapestry of life or something like that.
Consistent life ethic is the phrase we often use.
Yeah, the wide spectrum of life is the general idea of protecting life at all stages.
Yes.
Um, Community and family is important, so that goes along with decentralization, but also people being embedded in institutions under not underneath, but apart from the state that can also protect them from the state as well as giving them some institutional support. So it's not just an individualistic society. Here I'm doing the work for you, explaining these principles. Tell
You're
me if
doing a
I'm
great
wrong,
job.
if I'm getting it wrong. Social justice, economic security, environmental, protecting the environment, and peace and internationalism. Did you want to
Yes.
say more about any of that to give people a more expanded flavor of what it's all about?
I think you did a great job. You seem
Okay.
to know it well. So yeah, uh, basically, what all this has in common is that we are one society, one Earth, and we all really need to look out for each other instead of uh, being focused on ourselves. We we need to watch out for for others.
And I want to restate what you said earlier, repeat what you said earlier about this is a pluralistic party, not limited people that have some kind of profession of Christianity, but anyone that can get aboard with the fundamental values. So,
Yes, and
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 also is working for a pluralistic society rather than trying to institute some kind of a Bible-based, imposition
Correct.
on political life.
Yeah, well, within our party, I'd say that about 75% are Catholics, 15% are Eastern Orthodox, maybe a little less than 10% are Protestant, but we also have Muslims, Jews, atheists. Everyone is equally welcome. We're for uh, a pluralistic society. We're not trying to convert anyone. When we address our platform and our values, we argue from a base of natural law. We're not necessarily using biblical arguments. So, uh, we're clearly a Christian values party, but one doesn't necessarily need to be Christian at all to join the party to cooperate.
You use that phrase natural law, which I'm also familiar with, and this goes way back to the beginning of the Enlightenment and how thinkers were trying to use more philosophical approaches to defend what was a time when there was a lot of dissension about it, proper interpretation of the Bible, and which authority had the over the Christian community there would be, whether it be the Pope or elected folks or whatever. And so there's an attempt to ground these things in more secular philosophy, going all the way back to someone like Aristotle.
Mhm.
And I think both Calvin and the Catholic social justice folks have roots in that. Um,
Correct. Yeah.
so the natural law is an outgrowth of an attempt to revive a more philosophical basis for ethics, not necessarily a purely Christian or Bible based viewpoint.
Correct. Yes.
Um, I'm showing off some of my knowledge. I have a
You're very
background.
knowledgeable.
Yeah, well, I was a Catholic, I think, for most of my life. I was raised a Catholic, and then after a period of atheism in my late teens, early 20s, I returned to the church for a long time, took it very seriously. I won't get into the reasons I left in this show. But so far, you got no Buddhists in the party.
Uh, I don't personally know of any. Maybe there are. I'm not sure.
Well, maybe in the future. Um, can you tell us then? I've been talking about my life. What about your life? How did you come to this? Were you cradle Catholic and never questioned it, or where are you coming from?
Yeah. So, my family has been Catholic for 500 years.
Five hundred years.
Yeah, my ancestors are from a place called Goa on the coast of India. That's where the Portuguese landed when they were seeking a route to India. They landed there and claimed the location and sent missionaries, in particular Saint Francis Xavier. So Saint Francis Xavier and those missionaries converted the area to Catholicism. That's when my family converted, and so um, I'm not sure if people know, but back then, Goa uh, was the center of the diocese, which encompassed the whole eastern half of the globe. The eastern half of the globe was all one diocese, with Goa at the center. So um, there's quite a bit of strong Catholicism there. Uh, I my um, mom's family, uh, they were raised by nuns because their their mom passed away when they were young. So my grandfather couldn't take care of six kids and also work for um, to provide for them. So he had the nuns at the local convent raise them, and then we came over to America in the 70s, and have been I've been in California most of my life, or really all of my life, since I was one. But my faith, my Catholic faith, does play a large part in my life and my politics.
So the 1970s, you came over.
Yes,
Your
correct.
family came over. You were born here? I think you said you came over as an infant.
Yeah, I was 1 year old when I came over.
Did your family have any kind of culture shock with the varieties of religions they encountered? Because California would be in the 1970s quite a hot spot for alternative spiritualities.
I don't think that we had any culture shock with the different religions, but I think there may have been some different. It was notable how different Catholicism was in the U.S. versus in Africa. My parents came over from Africa.
Via something? Because you're talking about having a Indian, like the continent
Correct.
of India,
Yeah, so back in 1917, there was a significant migration from Goa to Africa for economic reasons. Mostly the colonies within Africa were undergoing a lot of development, including building of railroads and other developments. So my family, both sides of my family, moved over from Goa to Africa, East Africa, for those economic opportunities. And then it was the 70s where we moved over from Africa to the US.
well,
Also, again, for economic opportunity.
that's interesting. I didn't know that part of your history because behind me here, there's Gandhi, and I think he learned his skills as an organizer in South Africa at that very time in the 1920s. Did your family have any encounters with the Mahatma?
No, I don't believe so, but yeah, it was around that time when there was a lot of immigration from India to Africa for the development there.
And they were looking for equal rights and right to vote among them. I think that was the things that Gandhi was working on there before he returned to India and got involved in the independence movement. Anyway, another digression. So you were talking about your spiritual journey. So you came over here and you were rooted in Catholicism. I imagine you've encountered people from different religions. Was there a point in your life? Okay, I'm imagining you growing up in a family where at home there was, a very strong devotional tradition,
Hmm.
and maybe people you knew were also Catholics. Because I grew up in a neighborhood that was largely Catholic here in the United States, but it was very mixed ethnically, like Italians and Poles and
Hmm.
Germans, all kind of Irish Catholics. Was there a time when you became more aware yourself that, okay, not everyone believes what I believe, and then you had to think, okay, what do I base it on, or why is there different views on God or religion? Do you recall any?
I would say that uh, I didn't really understand the differences among the different Christian denominations until college, because I guess my environment was quite uh, well. My family was always just surrounded by Catholicism. My closest friend in school happened to be atheist, so I would talk to him frequently about God, but there was no um, alternate versions of God that were presented to me for me to grapple with. It was really Catholic. It was really faith versus no faith.
So atheism or theism,
Yeah. Yes.
specifically Christian theism.
Yes.
Okay, well, you're much older now. By now, you probably have more encounters with people. What was it that led you to get involved politically?
So my parents, when they came over to the U.S., they were very strong Democrats, and they still basically are. They aren't necessarily Democrats aligned with the current uh, Democratic Party, but more so aligned with the Democrats of the past, like Jimmy Carter or JFK, that style versus the newer Democrats, meaning that they were more attuned to the needs of the common person, uh, helping out, putting people before corporations, stuff like that. With me, I have very similar values to my parents, but the pro-life issue is strong, and I couldn't bring myself to vote for uh, Democrats. So my votes for Republicans has largely been because of the pro-life issue. Uh, Pro-life, pro-marriage, that all is good. I still support people before corporations and looking out for the little guy, which is, uh, at least in the past was common among Democrats. I think that today's Democratic Party has shifted quite a bit and maybe a bit more elitist than the party of the past.
It did shift quite a bit, in my opinion, especially in the 1990s with the first Clinton administration.
Yeah,
Their whole
exactly.
strategy was to raise corporate money, and that led to, unholy bedfellows in some instances. There
Absolutely.
was a lot more diversity in both parties back then, and that's probably when it started or accelerated this process of sorting into kind of rigid positions on both sides. I'm thinking right now specifically of the issue of abortion. There used to be pro-life and pro-choice people within both parties.
Absolutely.
It wasn't regarded as what a a partisan issue so much as an issue of personal conscience, and then how that translated into your stances in a spectrum of political issues.
Yes.
Um, what is the future of the American Solidarity Party? How are they seeing themselves fitting into the schema of American politics? Because as we all know, alternative parties don't usually do real well.
That's true. So our plan is to continue growing, be recognized in more and more states. My personal thoughts are that we can't be delusional in a two-party system. We honestly no third party really has a bright future, and that's why we in the party and particularly myself, I think that it's smart to advocate for a multi-party system. We are the California chapter is a member of the California Pro-Rep Coalition, which is has the goal of promoting uh, proportional representation within our voting systems and within our governmental structure. And unless we, as a nation, uh, break that duopoly, allow more parties to function. Uh, uh, Third parties aren't going to make major gains without that electoral reform.
That's one of the things I've been emphasizing on this program is electoral reform. So proportional representation, you want to describe that briefly for those who have never heard of such a thing?
Sure. So proportional representation is really uh, a system for multi-member parties or multi-member bodies, such as a legislature. Instead of having, well, let's use California as an example. Instead of having uh, a single legislative district with one legislator in it, we would like to see legislative districts with multiple legislators in them, and the selection of legislators would be proportional to the values of the demographic makeup of that legislative district. So, in uh, in a highly blue district, you might have if there are five legislators per district, you might have all five Democrats. In a very red district, it might be all Republicans. Or in if the district is maybe a bit purple, then you might have three Democrats and two Republicans, or three Republicans and two Democrats, or you might have two and an independent. And by um, making the system proportional representation, it'll open the door for alternative parties such as the Libertarians, Greens, and American Solidarity Party to have some representation at that legislative level.
So there's an acknowledgement that the electoral system has to change for you to actually have a chance or a realistic chance of winning office. Yet you're continuing to run candidates. So what is the strategy behind running candidates? What do you hope to gain from that?
So we have two kinds of campaigns that we've been running. We've run the big presidential and gubernatorial candidates. We have no delusion about our odds of winning. That is really to those types of campaigns are really to spread our movement, to get people to see us, to gain some visibility, and to join our movement. Where we expect to have some wins are at the very local level. We run candidates for city council, for library boards. Uh, those those smaller races are winnable, and we have won some. So uh, that that's where it's a two-pronged approach. Build up our candidates and our people at the local level while spreading awareness at the with the big campaigns.
You ran for governor of California in 2018.
18. Yes, correct.
2018. What was that experience like? Did you find it difficult to get attention? Were people responding to you? How did it go for you?
It was very difficult for all of the third party candidates to gain attention. The major party candidates wanted nothing to do with us. So we did have our own alternate party debate. I participated in that, and uh, there's a some sense of camaraderie among us third party candidates, even if we have very different values. Just the fact that we are all seeking more representative system where our respective values can have a seat at the table, that is a value that we share.
I did have another thought along that line. Which was, I wondered before I came to California if the top two system might have an opening for alternative parties in the primary, because major party candidates end up running against the candidates from the same party. In other words, in the governor's race right now, we have about a half a dozen Democrats who are saying they're going to run for governor. And if they're all on the ballot and you don't have a big name like Kamala Harris enter the race, they may, split the Democratic vote 5 ways or 6 ways and create an opening. If a alternative party could consolidate support from some disaffected voters, they could actually at least get close to getting into the top two. Is that I've only been in California 6 months looking into this. It doesn't look like they've made very many breakthroughs. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, you're technically right that it could happen, but I think if there were a lot of vote splitting, the the person that would be the alternative would likely be a Republican over a third party candidate.
So maybe that's I know you can only speculate like I can. Maybe that's because those party names are so well known,
Yeah.
because everybody, not well, there's like a third of the public at least that says they're sick of the two major parties, yet that's where the vote continually goes. So why do you think the alternative parties have such a hard time, even in a system that would have some opening? Do you think it just takes time for people?
I think people really have a tough time seeing a path forward. And there have been I know of different um, movements to make it easier for third parties, including vote pledging systems and stuff like that. At least in the presidential race, I tell people that really understand that people should really understand how the electoral college works. That our presidential election isn't determined by a national popular vote, but by in state by state separate elections, and that if you're unless you're in a swing state where your vote plays an unusually large role in the determination of the election, you should really vote for whoever you think is the best candidate, regardless of their chance of winning. Because, for example, in California, our votes aren't really going to determine the presidential election at all. Now, that advice is applicable to the presidential election, not necessarily other elections. So, uh, people still have to grapple with other elections. People still have to grapple with whether they want to vote for the lesser of two evils or for a candidate that they can really get behind. And for me, it has become a an obvious choice. I want to vote for uh, the people that I can get behind the most, but I do understand why others might choose to vote for the lesser of two evils.
And how would you say the efforts at electoral reform here in California are going? Is proportional representation getting, you said you belong to an organization that was promoting this. Are they getting anywhere? Or I know
We
ranked
plan
choice
on
voting is around, but what else?
we for that California Pro-Rep Coalition, we plan on having a voter initiative on the ballot in the future. It'll be pricey, so we've got to make sure we uh, are strategically set up to win and not just have not just go through the motions for some ideological reason that we want to actually make some change. Uh, we're currently deciding when that might work out. It'll be a few years into the future because of the costs and the resources involved, the planning. Um, but I just look at the electoral form community as a whole, and I do see um, positive changes. There are cities that are adopting ranked choice voting. Fargo, North Dakota recently adopted approval voting. There are also some setbacks sometimes, so all we can do is push forward and keep trying.
Have you encountered resistance in trying to promote? I assume you're trying to promote proportional representation to people who aren't already on board, or is that like a future thing you're going to do?
For the proportional representation, everyone that I've described it to and explained how it works to, they seem to think it's a good system. So I think much of that is really just uh, a need for voter education.
And in California, I'm not so familiar with the electoral reform movement here as I was in Oregon. They changed the voting system 2010 from the kind people are familiar with to this top two system. Do you sense the voters are tired of this already?
Uh, I see benefits and negatives to the top two system, but I will point out that the American Solidarity Party of California i- is a plaintiff in some litigation that we are up against the state to potentially make changes
I
to the top two
reported on
system.
that. And if people are interested, they could go back to where I discussed this in one of my earlier videos. And that court case is going to start hearing arguments at the end of this month, I think.
I don't know too much details. I haven't been following along too closely.
You should keep up with my show.
I do watch most of your shows, not all of them.
Thank you. I appreciate your continued episodic uh, viewership. So people want to find out more. What's the best way to learn about the American Solidarity Party, meet other people? get involved if they're ready to do that? What do you?
So if you go to solidarity-party.org, uh, that's our website. We've got a page on uh, chapters. Get involved with your local chapter. We're a very, very grassroots party, so it's very easy to get involved as much as you're comfortable with. Whether you just want to help out a little bit, if you got want to get involved in leadership, it's very easy to get started. Um, we in certain states there's a lot of on the ground activity. So it that I shouldn't say that that's most states, but California, Texas, Michigan, Illinois, I mean, and Ohio, a few others. You'll find activity in person.
Is California a real active bunch?
We've got our crowd in Southern California as and a separate crowd in Northern California, and we collaborate and work together. We're all one chapter, but we are geographically separated in that sense. But yeah,
Meet regularly?
we have online meetings regularly, but we also have certain in-person events. I think last month we had an in-person barbecue. We show up at pro-life marches together. Sometimes we meet for dinner or a meal, just to get to know each other and plan for future party action and to advance the movement.
So it's got socializing as part of the mix.
That's true. Yes.
That sounds attractive, although when you said in-person barbecue, I was imagining barbecuing a person.
Oh,
I hope that's not what you meant.
no.
Anything else you wanted to bring up before we end this session?
Uh, I uh, I just want to thank you for your time.
Oh,
I've been a fan of your show since almost a year now, and I think that what you're doing, the information you present, is really helpful to a lot of people.
I hope so. And now that you've been on the show, we can get all those American Solidarity people to tune in, at least
I,
one episode.
I think a lot of them do follow you because
Oh, great.
I've been spreading your show, knowledge of your show around, and people that have viewed have told me, "Hey, this Alan Zundel guy is really knows what he's talking about," and uh, and
I don't
he
get
seems
that
like
too much in my family.
people have told me that they feel you're a pretty solid person.
Okay. Well, I hope you warned them that I got heterodox uh, religious views. So be prepared for that. Uh, Thanks a lot for coming on. I appreciate it. Always enjoy our conversations. And anything else? I don't think so. Thanks to all of you for tuning in. And I guess that's the end of it. All right. Till next time.